So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this lifestyle radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You don't think you need that today? Do you need
Well,
that today?
I just want to make sure every once in a while that just to make sure that
now you're listening to Lucas.
No, we're
Hey,
listening
everybody.
to Ira and Lucas try and fix things that are broken.
Well, I don't know. You all told me to get a new board today. So
Did you
I
buy
got
one?
So get a new mixing board. So I bought this new mixing board, and
Yes.
Lucas is like, "What the hell are you buying?"
you basically bought the same thing. Again, you did. It was like the exact same thing. It was like the exact same problem.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah, but
Yes.
you said smaller with more inputs.
I know,
or
but
something.
I said more inputs and an audio interface and not a mixer.
I think it's time for you guys to go on a bro trip.
No,
I
just
told him just
send
to
the
buy it,
Amazon
then, but
link.
then he can't show his ass up here early enough to get things ordered because he's lazy as
I'm
fuck.
not lazy as fuck.
He is
but
the
I-
laziest motherfucker
just to
I've
prove
ever
to you-
seen in
just
my
to
life.
prove
By
to
the
you-
way, everybody, meet Lucas. He's the man that also sits behind over there when we usually do all the mixing and all that stuff.
Such a
I'd love to
wonderful-
show you Al, but we did that last week.
we tried. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
So yeah. He's now going on Amazon just to show me. Dr. Vicky, hi. She, look, she's so nervous. What? Come on. Okay, just say hi. I know, then you'll turn into a sarcastic human. So what's happening today? We're missing Tyler today. We should call Tyler because Tyler had his wisdom
Cashman.
teeth taken out today. How do we call Tyler?
You could probably do it through Skype.
You can add him if you can call out. You can add him on your Skype.
Through Skype.
Should I put him on my Skype?
Sure.
No, we could do it through the same one.
Can
Could we
we?
not do it through the same one?
I don't know his number.
We can do it through yours, Lucas.
Yeah.
I don't actually know his number, but Tyler, if you're listening, call it.
We were thinking about you.
You don't know his number? You'd have to
Well, I
look
do,
it up.
but it's on my phone. My phone
Yeah,
is
you have to look
recording
it up.
this.
I have a number for him to call into. Or yeah, and then she could put him on speaker. There you go.
All right, call Tyler if you're listening, and not jacked up on all those narcotics. You should call us so that we can.
Yeah, he'll probably
Razz
sound
you.
real funky, won't he?
Yeah, he'll sound. Hello. You know how Tyler is on.
Okay, so why, though? Why is he
Tyler-
like this?
Tyler had his wisdom teeth taken out today.
All four?
I don't know.
Oh, I had
Maybe.
all four done at the same time. I ended up wandering around the corner of Bathurst and Bloor, waiting
feel
for
like-
my brother-in-law.
You smell something burning?
It's a doobie.
Seizure.
I'm sorry, I'll put it out.
I'd rather a seizure than a stroke, I think.
Is burnt toast or something?
Yeah. Is it a stroke?
I think what paralyzes half of your body? Stroke?
Strokes do,
Yeah, so
yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's
I
that
think
one.
it's a seizure. Okay. Look. So we've got an interesting show today. I was going to do it on my own because, well, I was going to act as all three people and just take turns sitting in different chairs and be like, so what do you think about this? I'll be like, I think about this. What do you think about? Well, I'll tell you what I think about it. But thankfully, we still have
The depths
all
of
of our
ADD.
we still have all of our people here. So hello, everyone, and welcome to The Higher State. My name is Dr. Ira Price, and we talk about all things related to cannabis, both medically and lifestyle and recreation. We try to bridge the gaps. We try to do all the fun stuff. And one of the things that we've been doing lately, which is part of our new format, which I probably don't have to say again, is we go through literature. Today we're talking about something that's really interesting because how often do we hear that with cannabis legalization, we're going to see a massive rise, or we have seen a massive rise, and I have some news articles saying how much cannabis is rising in the youth and all the detriments that the youth are going to have from cannabis. So we decided to look at a paper that was literally just published in a really good journal called BMJ, published on July 10th. Am I right? I may have lied about that. Dr. Vicky.
I have no audio on Vicky at all.
No audio on Vicky?
No.
Vicky, keep talking.
Okay. It was accepted on June 12th.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't actually say that right. July 10th, 2019.
There you go.
Oh, are we dealing with another screwed up thing?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I bought a new cord even.
You keep buying the cheap shit, Ira.
No, I bought some good shit this time. Can you talk, Vicky?
Yeah, keep talking.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that you're not using your swear jar.
Oh, right. Can you
Probably
hear
already
her at all?
dropped, Like,
Yeah,
Depends where it
if you can bring her mic up a little bit, then it'll be fine.
It's Craig. Okay,
Okay.
keep talking.
Come a little closer then, and go ahead.
She
I'm
talks.
like-
Aim it down a little bit.
even like
No, like yeah, right. No. Right at your mouth, like this. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, keep talking.
I'm like
to just do this.
right
You talk
beside the
very
microphone.
quietly.
Only like when
Maybe
there's a
you should put your
microphone
face
front
in
of my
it.
face. Usually I'm pretty loud.
All right.
She's good now.
Oh, okay, great. So we need a new mixer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you should have brought that damn one today. It was
No.
why? Oh,
Well, I mean, it might have helped in this circumstance.
oh, are you
but,
saying that by
overall-
next week I'm gonna have or if I go get this thing you tell me it'll have all the inputs too, and I don't need this thing?
Yeah, man. Amazon Prime, bro.
Oh. Can you order it? Can you just order this
I'll
shit?
do it while we're sitting.
Okay, cool. Okay. So what the hell was I even talking about today?
I
don't know.
have no
It's
idea.
Like feedback on you.
Well, there's feedback.
Like
yeah,
you're-
I can hear myself.
Yeah.
Where am I hearing myself?
Through the speaker.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
'Cause I'll do it.
He likes
Okay.
to
That's
hear
why-
his
that's why I
voice.
can't have it too loud, right? Because it'll start to.
I'm telling you, I smell. I like the sound of that. I feel like I could hear my own voice.
a little bit of
feel
an echo.
important?
I feel important. This is awesome.
He feels
It
important.
is
Hello.
How long have you been
I
lecturing?
am your leader.
Yeah, no, I like this. I don't usually like to sound my own voice, but right now I hear like two voices. What are you trying to say there? We can't even hear you. You talk so softly.
Time
Vic.
to switch strains, Ira.
What's that? Did you find what I need? Oh, is that a switcher?
This is the whole interface.
Okay, let's buy an interface.
$200.
That's great. Just bill me for it.
Maybe we should focus, guys.
Okay, fine. Oh,
Yeah,
we have the one who's telling us.
We
to
have,
focus
yeah.
again.
There we go. There you go.
Okay,
We're gonna
there's
stay on
always one
track tonight.
person here who wants us to stay on task. Okay, but before we get started with that, let's just go through some of the news of the week. So I think that there's an interesting study that came out this week that has nothing to do really with what we're going to be talking about, but is interesting. We all know that there is something called cannabis use disorder. Cannabis use disorder is like what happened is like an addiction to cannabis, but instead of the addiction, it's an abuse issue, and it affects your life and does all these things. So
I would say addiction is like a layman's term, right? Like that's like
Oh.
addiction has connotation, right?
yes, you are an addict. I don't what. Don't be smart on this damn podcast. We don't want smart people here. Okay? Once you start bringing the real science in, listen, we're like,
Start looking down at your
yeah,
jacket and going like, what
yeah,
the?
yeah. I'm gonna put this on you. Okay, listen. Sorry, explain that again, Dr. Squizzato.
Well, addiction is like a judgment. It's not a medical term that we use, right? We use like substance use disorder.
No,
So-
we use
but-
addiction. DSM-4 talks about addiction, but addiction has to affect social issues, no?
Right. Addiction is like a social term. It's not.
Right.
It's not a medical diagnosis.
I didn't know
A
that.
medical diagnosis
I know
is
that
about
either.
that.
alcohol use disorder or
Right, you're
opioid
right.
use
It's
disorder
always a
or
disorder.
Yeah, you're right.
Cannabis use disorder.
Yes.
Addiction is something.
Addiction is the effect of the disorder,
Right.
or a term
It's a
used
byproduct of.
Yeah.
to communicate
it's a
to
term.
people.
Yeah. It's not.
But
it's not a medical.
But what defines? But there is. If you look at the DSM-4, even though we use the DSM-5 now,
What's the DSM?
so it okay. What is the
It's the Diagnostic Statistics Manual. It's used in
Psychiatry. It's
Yeah.
psychiatry that lists all of the diseases
Yeah.
that can possibly be related to
But-
psychiatrists.
I'm
and
fairly
it
certain
does
that,
standardize it.
like
And
in the criteria for substance use disorder,
there's abuse and
addiction is not a term that's used in it. It's like use with.
I'm going to say that it is, and we're going to
increasing-
Google it right now.
I think they have like tolerance, dependence in
Search
there,
keyword.
affects social functioning, affects work functioning, and spending greater amounts of time trying to access use.
And addiction.
DSM-4, right?
There we go.
DSM-5.
But we use the DSM-5 now, but screw that.
5.
Substance abuse and substance...
Consistently find that a single construct of addiction that combines abuse and...
Right. So I just don't know.
Well,
I think it's when you talk about addiction, it's abuse plus dependence plus it socially has to affect you.
Right.
It's the social effect that creates addiction. Now, there's a lot of different definitions of addiction. Okay, I'm just going to agree with her.
It says in the fifth edition of the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, as compared to the DSM-4, the DSM-5's chapters on addiction was changed from substance-related disorders to substance-related and addictive disorders.
Da-na-na-na. So I win. Do I win?
Kind of.
Yeah!
Ding, 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 ding,
That's an
ding.
actual quote from the DSM-5.
They changed the title of the chapter.
Oh, okay.
So.
Doctor, honestly,
I would say
oh,
but
she's
like,
still gonna.
They specifically list 9 types of substance addictions within this category: alcohol, caffeine, cannabis, hallucinogens, inhalants,
I
opioids,
finally
sedatives,
up one thing on Dr. Squizzato.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Hypnotics.
Are you sure? She can't
Axial.
agree. See, I wasn't willing to agree. Now she won't agree.
It's a government website too, though.
I love it.
It's the
Al?
NCBI.
Yes, sir.
Don't knock Dr. P. I want to do the happy dance.
But what is this? This is.
I'm usually never correct.
It's the U.S. National Library of Medicine.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna pretend that's real.
I don't know if you're actually. That is real.
Oh,
It's a .gov website, though.
Yeah, but
it's gotta be real then.
Are you reading a review of the DSM-5?
No, it's not a review. No, it's not a review.
Reading a clip from DSM-5.
It's written by this John E. Grant doctor.
It's an abstract. Oh, it's a journal article. It's an article. Different definitions of addiction. Yeah, they define it now. Just saying.
Okay.
I mean, we're probably both right, okay, for argument's sake. I'm just going to say that. I'm right.
Yeah.
But I'm usually never right when Dr. Squizzato starts saying stuff because all these people have all this knowledge. She remembers things. She knows these things. I'm just happy
Memories of mother.
that I just like, I may have even just, I'm just happy. Now you made my day. I finally am correct.
I'm going to be doing this in the background.
Right, she's not going to let it go.
I pulled up the DSM-5.
She's going to be
right.
constantly knocking you down. I'm going to be researching.
I'm just saying I'm right. Okay, anyways, let's go back to what we're talking about. So, when talking about cannabis use disorder and how to treat it, the treatment for cannabis use disorder, they suggest in a study that was published in JAMA, which is pretty huge. It's we've reviewed articles in JAMA before. That was the 2015 one. They suggest that potential treatment for cannabis use disorder is cognitive behavioral therapy plus cannabis.
Yes, I saw that.
Huh?
To slowly wean you off?
Yeah. So the same way that we're all saying but I'm saying medical cannabis plus
CBT,
cognitive behavioral therapy. I just thought it was kind of neat. Here she goes.
No.
She's going to prove
me something. We discussed this earlier. It makes sense. People with opioid use disorders, we give them opioids to get off opioids. So
it'd be too
it
much
does
of a
make
shock
sense.
to the system to just cold turkey.
Isn't an addiction something?
Then you have to go through withdrawal, and not everyone wants to go through withdrawal, right?
What withdrawal from weed?
Like depressed, irritable.
Oh.
More mood things,
Okay.
may even feel more pain too.
So
right?
solved by going out and working out and shit.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There's
Al,
lots of
what's
ways,
your thoughts there, buddy?
Well, I was just going to say, can't an addiction be to anything? Pretty much. Like you can overdo it, but pretty much anything.
So that's the definition of addiction. It has to affect your life.
Yes.
No matter what
There was one that was like a compulsive buying. Was it?
right.
Like
No matter what addiction you have or what definition
Internet
of addiction.
I have an internet addiction.
It has to affect your life in a negative way. Vicky's looking. Vicky's got something. See her face. She's doing.
I haven't read everything yet. I just.
All right. So, by the way, hi again. I don't know why I'm saying that. Anyway, all right. So that's one piece of news today. that I think was super interesting. Anybody else believe that was interesting, or is that just me?
No, I saw that article this morning, and I was like, huh.
Yeah. There's also this CBD guys, these Christian book distributors that can't help you with your cannabis order, so stop calling them. That's what it says. Christian book distributors, otherwise known as CBD.
They must love that.
can't help you buy your cannabis, so don't try. What else is happening in the news? I don't know very much.
I have an article here on the Growth Op where Vikings getting high on cannabis in Newfoundland.
Absolutely.
Obviously, everybody's getting high.
Those are my people. We've been getting high for a while.
Well, it says here.
You look Icelandic.
I'm like 90% like Norwegian Scandinavian.
You look Scandinavian.
No
I was going to say
the blue eyes, but my sisters are both blonde.
But
shit,
you look
so
like a Viking.
Complexion.
Yeah.
Get a room, guys.
All right.
Hey,
listen. He showed up late. Actually, today he didn't.
No,
See, I'm just so used to saying he showed up late. Look, Vicky's not even going to answer us because she's going to be so intense. Look, this is doctors. By the way, I have to...
ammunition.
I was going to clarify that the chapter is substance-related and addictive disorders, but they're saying that there's a lot of confusion between addiction and dependence.
Agreed. Dependence.
How do you define this?
So dependence involves tolerance and withdrawal, whereas addiction has to affect dependence, withdrawal plus affects your life.
I've had this conversation with Dr. Ferences from CAMH before.
Like it impairs your ability to engage socially, impairs your work, you're spending time thinking about gaining access to the substance, using the substance, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But you can be addicted to porn. So
you can be what's that?
You can be addicted to porn.
There's a whole Netflix.
Well, you can be addicted to everything.
Yeah.
You can be addicted
to being in love. I know a couple people like
for sure.
Fair enough.
Also, when they
here we go.
Addiction,
she's not going to let it go.
It's
of course, right? Which is we're not really sure.
We're real doctors.
Well, I mean, the brain is a black box, anyways. Like a box.
To say that we understand
the
what the fuck's going on. It's
But I'm just glad. No, she's not letting it go. So this is the thing about doctors. You tell us something, we will research the shit out of it to prove our point until the game
pointed weapon
over.
And just
I just put in one
and then
quarter.
wait in the weeds and just snipe you with it.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Okay, you know what else was interesting? I just was looking at what were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So CanTrust. We didn't talk about it last week because I think it just happened over Thursday, Friday maybe of last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
CanTrust lost its license to sell cannabis from certain parts of it anyways.
I don't think they've had it pulled yet. I think that it's just suspended.
Yeah, it hasn't been pulled. It's just they lost their ability, so they're suspended for now.
Within 30 days.
Because within 30 days what?
There's a report to address how they grew unlicensed pot delivered.
Oh, right. Yeah, so they were just they were growing cannabis that wasn't sanctioned. Now, they were probably using good methods. They were probably using all the stuff they should have been, but what? What's that?
I mean, I think that's pretty widespread across the board, though, isn't it?
What's that? I can't hear you.
Like what they got caught for. I think that's
you think other LPs are growing without sanctioning? I don't think so.
What they got caught for was rooms that were not authorized. They put up curtains and basically then took their pictures to send to whoever or videos or whatever. You know,
the extra stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening widespread, to be honest. I've been to a lot of LPs. I've visited 10, 15 different LPs. I've worked with LPs. I've been medical directors of LPs. Most of these guys are pretty strict because they're worried about Health Canada, and they've put in millions and millions of dollars.
Fair.
Now, I think one of the reasons why perhaps LPs are doing this kind of thing is because they're looking for that leg up. Right now, there's a large there's a paucity of cannabis, so we need cannabis on the market, and maybe they're trying to get their shareholders to approve. So they're different LPs. Maybe there are some guys that are doing it, but they're trying any leg they can to get, or anything they can to get a leg up. Mm-hmm. But I'm in some ways I'm glad that Health Canada is at least sticking to their guns.
Yeah, they have to, because
they have to.
I mean, well, to be fair, all the stories that I heard were right at the beginning. of the legalization period, and I think that they've kind of like sorted that out.
Now, that being said, I've also been on the receiving end of really shitty media and really bad stories that have come out of government bodies, right? I've been on the receiving end of those, and a lot of them were falsified. A lot of it like made me, for example, look like I was this lying devil. And that wasn't the case, right? It was a misunderstanding of a single word, or it was just But the way that the media likes to spin things is they like to do these kind of things.
Just chop it up a little.
I haven't heard it from the horse's mouth, so I don't know.
And I was saying that Health Canada was just going to inspect the cannabis that they seized and then potentially just re-release the supply.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, what they probably did was have a curtain that separated one room. And technically, it's still one room, even though it's separated by a curtain. What defines a room? There are so many things that and so the way that we understand it is through the eyes of the media. And we know the media loves this yellow journalism. They love this shit. They love spreading lies.
What do you mean by yellow journalism?
And you know the stuff that happened in the 1920s and all that stuff.
I think now the major problem is clickbait. Is everything is defined by clicking, and they'll sensationalize to the degree that just whatever it takes to get a click.
Yeah,
it's also the word, the headline. I mean,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
I mean, it's wow.
Yeah, so who knows where the truth is? What I mean is, like, this is just
somewhere
all
in the middle.
It's somewhere in the middle, and who knows, right? So all Health Canada says we're putting your license on notice until we do our due diligence. So in the media, you're guilty right away, but that's not the case, right? Unfortunately, stocks go down and people get harmed, and I've been on the receiving end of it, so I'm a little bit more sensitive to it. What are you going to say?
I was going to say that maybe this is a little bit controversial, but the media does tend to be a little bit left. And so they do condemn you, before maybe all the facts are out.
Something which
and that once you're condemned, there's like no road back to redemption.
Yeah, there isn't.
No.
I mean, the social, like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are a good example of how that plays out, right?
Yeah, 100%.
When you get banned from it, there is no road to redemption.
Right. So, I mean, I've been down that road, and I still, even with, speaking engagements or, consulting, you just Google my name and that shit. But a silly article that was a half-truth from the Speculator comes out, and it's bullshit, but it's the only, and it's still number one on that list. So,
But that speaks to my point that, there's no path back to,
right.
Good graces.
There's no road to
like you can't clear your name.
Yeah, I mean,
longer,
truthfully,
right?
I don't care anymore. Those who know,
but the implications as a society are horrible.
It's horrible.
That's
right.
We can't learn if we can't go back and fix. Like, it's just insane.
So,
it's a problem we have, and cannabis is scrutinized to the max. They're waiting for things like this. They're just waiting. Like, media just waits.
How long do you think that takes to change? Like that mentality towards it.
I say like decades.
Yeah.
You think decades, eh?
Absolutely.
See, I mean, which brings us to our study, but
you have to wait for like the old guard to
Yeah.
retire and or die.
And they're living longer and longer.
Yeah, and you have to wait for the Generation Xers to be the predominant workforce in society, right?
Yeah.
So, you have to wait for generation millennials. I'm a millennial. You have to wait for the.
You're a millennial?
I'm an old millennial.
What the hell?
I know, right? I was
you are the anti-millennial.
Anyhow,
grows up on a farm.
I'm like the first millennial. Right?
I grew up in the middle of nowhere too. That's why I don't think I'm a millennial though.
No. It is defined by
we know when it's defined.
I know
81 or 82.
Yeah,
but it should be experienced
though
because I didn't really grow up with the internet. I didn't have a cell phone in high school.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But I feel like that's the major.
You're
change,
a rural millennial.
I was born in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Anyhow, what I'm saying is, you got to wait for the millennial generation to be the ones who are in power or in places of power, and because we're the ones that grew up with cannabis, and we don't really think it's a big deal, right?
Yeah, we don't have the same hang-ups.
You have to wait.
I'm from the
'60s,
so.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, I mean, it's definitely bimodal distribution then, because we have the 60s that grew up this way, but you had so many people that were anti, like there was such an anti...
The suburban housewife now.
It was different in the
Right.
60s.
Yeah.
It really was.
Big difference. Suburbia accepts it.
And
That's
I
a
grew
big
up
difference.
downtown in Toronto. I grew up in Yorkville in the 60s. So, I mean, it's a big difference between now and
I
then.
think that like the guys at the top still have a very closed-minded cannabis, and you
There's
just got to
been-
wait for the
Well, or
Get
the
out of
guys at
town.
the top, like they stand to lose money by cannabis.
So, but then I'm
Yeah.
going to look at this. Let me point this back to before we get into our study here, which brings us to that kind of thing. But like we're saying, what does it say about us in the cannabis industry that are supposed to be so open-minded, that are so quick to judge people like CannTrust because we see what's in the media? So
Because of the media.
maybe as a generalization, even though we don't want to be that way, we are a little bit that way. So maybe we should reflect
Got to be
on us a
careful
little
not to
bit.
eat your own after a while.
Wait,
That's right.
Why are we judging CannTrust?
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't judge.
Look
No,
at what
wait.
Origami did, and they're still very much in business.
What's that? Hold on. Once you still send people to CannTrust. Yeah, I mean, I would
still
too.
did.
But because they're not guilty.
Yeah.
It's just it's a shitty media thing. But all of a sudden, and I was guilty of it too when I first read it, and then I'm like, shit, man, I've been on that firing squad.
I think, especially in the industry where it is right now, there's still like kind of jockeying for position, right?
Well, it's still the Wild West.
Exactly.
No matter which way you look at it, it's funny because
So it's like
I'm
that-
not even sure where I fit every day.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like that's part and parcel for the landscape.
Yeah,
People are going to go after
I'd like
it.
to know what really happened, because in my mind, what it sounds like is they had one room. The room was split. It's not considered a room unless it's like in the building grow, and they put you can put a dividing line. Lots of people put dividing lines
Yeah,
up.
I've heard of that.
They just do that all the time.
Like
I-
they know these regulations. They were only supposed to have one room.
No,
Yeah.
you have to sanction the different rooms of your grow, but some are so big, and some you want to grow different stuff so that you can
on different cycles.
on different cycles you
I
can
see.
put up like
You could
partitions.
get them on
Sure.
technicalities, I'm sure, just because
Is a
of the nature of it.
You know those fold? You remember
Yeah, of
like
course.
growing like in churches and shit.
Yeah,
they
I
have those
know.
folding things. They open up to big walls. So that would be a totally one room.
Yeah.
With a partition in it. Is
Sure.
the partition? Maybe they didn't sanction the partition. Whatever it is. At the end of the
Blah,
day,
blah, blah.
they were just trying to get cannabis out. So I'm not going to judge it. And even if they did something like that, I mean, at the end of the day, they were still following good practices. Hopefully. So whatever. What?
Like they're trying to produce it in such mass quantities that there's always going to be issues, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But most people don't. Most people are just so quick to judge. Stop judging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Ira, stop judging.
I can't hear you because you're always using your shatterizer. Al.
I don't have my shower. I'm smoking a doobie,
I was
dude.
judging you. Oh, even worse. You're smoking.
This is another interesting one. It's
What's
like
the last article there?
This is one that was just on Vice.
Can you? They can't hear you up there.
Oh, so this one's on Vice about Canada's their legal weed rules for advertising being too tough, and that we're going to lose out to the U.S. market because of it, and that's a huge chunk of money.
I agree. I fully agree.
So what's the benefit of us being very strict on it? It's just get it away from the kids. Is that the argument?
Yeah. So
constantly?
the argument is a
Bullshit.
great argument to bring this up. Get it away from the kids.
Bullshit.
That's
Always
the
bullshit.
right. So I think maybe it is bullshit.
Sure,
Hold on.
but we don't advertise alcohol. We don't advertise.
What do you mean we don't have you looked at those
What, in movies?
Clydesdales
Yeah.
running with their
They
have a whole
advertise
fleet of
their-
horses.
Right. Sorry.
The NFL
Budweiser,
Okay,
yeah,
so-
like what is
is full alcohol.
Sorry.
Cigarettes.
We don't advertise
Totally
cigarettes,
different.
right?
Yeah.
Totally different.
It is different, but people consume it in the same way. They still combust cannabis.
Okay.
Mostly, right?
But I mean, I'm
Anyhow.
People, yeah, but
I'm just saying-
we're not promoting combustion. We can promote safe ways of
course.
alcohol use. We can also give alcohol IV, and we don't promote IV alcohol. We used to give that
Really?
for toxic alcohols. Yeah, before they had
to, like, wean them off?
cyanocobalamin or whatever.
Oh.
We used to before we had an antidote for toxic alcohol ingestion, like acetone or like
you mean if
ethylene
you like,
glycol.
just drink too much at once?
No, if you drink like ethylene glycol, you'll die.
Yeah.
Like like windshield washer fluid,
Right,
all
right.
those things.
Blind. And
You'll
then-
die. Yeah,
I
you
knew
go
a girl
blind.
in
It
high
sucks.
school who just drank so much
But-
vodka in like one shot that she had to be hospitalized. Kind of
Yeah, I mean that happens. That's like a daily occurrence. That's like 10.
God.
That's like 100 people a day in Hamilton. Yeah. But like,
listen, I grew up in a small town.
But then we talk about then we talk about toxic alcohols. Toxic alcohols are like really bad alcohols, like ethylene glycol and
So people drink this trying to get
methanol and acetone and whatever it is.
Yeah.
All those things.
Why?
So people,
Acetone's not alcohol.
right? It's not. Oh, it's
No.
acetone. I don't know what I was thinking.
I know what acetone is.
Acetone is a key. Yeah. Acetone is what I was doing. You know why I thought of that? It's the methanol and ethylene glycol. Those are toxic alcohols. Okay. Well, I was thinking about that because I was doing my daughter's nails the other day. And
it's nail polish remover.
Right, it's nail polish remover. But she had she had some like nail polish on her.
Okay.
And I'm like, shoot, I got to get this stuff off. And she's like, hold on, Papa. And she goes into the cupboard and brings me a bottle of acetone. She's like, this is what you can use. I'm like, am I allowed to use acetone on a 4-year-old?
Sure, why not?
I don't know. Is that stuff toxic?
Everything's toxic.
Yeah. Anyway, I used it. Just saying.
You looked at the food labels lately.
Right. It can't be any worse than mac and cheese.
Yeah, pretty much.
It can't be any worse than going outside and breathing.
Right. Yeah. Well, mac and cheese is probably anyway. And
how many types of plastic are in mac and cheese?
It's so crazy. So, anyways, what we use alcohol for there is it's metabolized very similarly. So before we had before the widespread use of the antidote. We used to use alcohol, and we would infuse alcohol we'd use like Jim Beam. Like literally, you'd go to you can go and we used to have on formulary.
We used to have beer on formulary.
We probably still have beer on formulary, but we have
many doctors
liquor.
Got seriously?
I think we still do in the ICU. They must. No, it's gone. Anyway, it used to be. Okay, just saying that's what we used to use. But yeah, back to your point on it's actually a really good point because. The guys that we had here last week, or 2 weeks ago, was it last week?
2 weeks ago.
That have that really awesome protein hemp company, and plant-based protein and really cool stuff that's biodegradable and reusable, renewable sources. Cool. It is actually awesome, and I'm going to stop by there today after to pick up the protein.
Things, but the dog part of it is brilliant, though.
Yeah,
so they're not even able to advertise?
They can't do it in Canada because you can't advertise.
Okay.
That's craziness.
So,
it's a little overboard.
Yeah, that's a little...
Because they're worried about the kids, which brings us...
So what governing body keeps reiterating this? Or
Health Canada.
How do we get rid of Health Canada?
Right. It's Health Canada. Well, I think Vicky nailed it.
So who's on the board of... have we gone through this before? Who's on the board of Health Canada, and how do we change it?
It's the Minister of Health. It all comes through the Minister of Health and their people.
But none
it's
elected?
all appointed. None of Health Canada is elected.
That's the freaking problem, man.
None of it's elected. Yeah, but I mean, it's a little difficult to elect a health minister.
Why? We have the internet.
I don't think the Minister of Health
is appointed.
He gets appointed.
She's appointed.
She's appointed, or he. But and then they have their factions.
Yeah.
And they run.
But
Health Canada is a federal.
Health Canada is like a bunch of scientists who are trying to make sure.
But they all fall under.
Yeah.
If you look at the ACMP or their new Cannabis Act, all falls under the Minister of Health.
Yeah.
But they have delegates who run all that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, and they put task forces together, and then they decide what they're going to do.
Asking a whole bunch of questions.
This is not very smart. It's not smart. And Frick, what's his name? The guy that got fired from Canopy, their CEO. He said Canada's played out.
Bruce Litton.
What's that? Bruce Litton.
Bruce Litton.
When he said Canada's played out, Canada's played out.
You're strangling it to the point where...
Yeah. We may have started it. It sort of feels like me a while ago. Am I played out?
We're going to be the test case in what not to do now.
Am I played out, Al? Really?
I think they just tried to simplify things. And it's just oversimplified.
No, I think they just tried to overly liberalize.
I
control it too much.
Are we talking about him being fired and stuff?
No.
No, I meant the
You're not paying any attention.
No, actually, you know what? I'm not, Ira.
What kind of it really depends what kind of federal government we have in place when these things happen, because this would be completely different under, I'm not saying that conservative is better, but in this instance it would probably work in our favor to open it up.
Yeah, because it's capitalism.
So just
it's collect the taxes
let the free
and let
market
the people
do its thing. Like,
right.
It's going to do it better than government will. That's
right.
the problem.
That's the point. Yeah, that's the conservative way. Let the free market reign, and we'll take the taxes
because humans are. Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that. Anyway, so and then they come up with all these ideas. By the way, did you know that who wrote that? I think on Tracy Lamoury's. Hey Tracy, if you're listening, check it out on her Facebook. She wrote, "What is it? Wherever NDP strongholds are, there's far more addiction, and like it's all the sketchiness,
what dependence? What?
Yeah,
imagine that.
Hamilton is a massive NDP.
Oh yeah, I know.
Stronghold.
No, I know.
Anyway, all right. But that brings me to our study and our question of the day, which is, what has happened to the youth, which we're also concerned about? Of course, we have to be concerned about since legalization in different countries, not just Canada, but in a whole bunch of countries. You know, I'm looking at these studies here. If you look at CBC put out this report based on Health Canada.
So you should say not studies.
So right,
articles.
Sorry, stats. Right, good
Opinion
point.
pieces. Yeah.
So articles. What are those called when you make opinion pieces?
Yes.
And also surveys, but no real actual studies. StatsCan. It says first time cannabis up after legalization. StatsCan reports, but then
that was also released 2 months after legalization.
Right. Yeah, it was.
I don't feel like
that's right.
Time
and it said, and it wasn't even. It was adult use of cannabis that was up from 14 to 18%. Mostly.
All the closet users.
The largest growing population, like we know, between 45 and 64. But one thing that they did say is that it wasn't because of the adolescents. There was no real change that they mentioned here because of adolescents. But in some places like Colorado, they've gone back down. But here overall, you have these pieces that really, I think they're like scare tactics. Cannabis is legal. Therefore, everybody's going to use cannabis. Look, StatsCan puts it out.
It sort of reminds me when the government put HPV vaccine out there for everyone, or the girls. Everyone was worried that, if we're going to vaccinate everyone with HPV, they'll all go sleeping around with everyone. It sort of reminds me of that.
Right. Oh, did that happen?
It totally happened. There are so many groups who are against putting HPV in schools because they were worried that it was going to turn.
They rather them die from cervical leading to uterine cancer.
They were worried it was going to turn all the girls into this,
But guys get it too now.
Wasn't that yeah. There's always
it's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's hysteria.
What's the fallacy?
Logical fallacy
or something like that. Yeah.
Illogical.
Yeah. Anyhow, but yeah.
It's the hysteria. It's the fear of this thing is going to happen. But this is what's happened throughout world's time.
It's control.
Right. Is it control?
Of course.
Why do you think that's control?
Because the people that have power don't want to lose the power, and they see how fast things are changing, and they have no way to stop it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the free flow of information and people making their own choices and informed from different people than they have been traditionally.
I just think people are ignorant and dumb. I hate to use those words, but these are people that have bias beyond bias beyond bias.
But why?
They're people who don't think critically.
Yeah.
But why? Why don't they?
They're not critical thinkers.
No, but they probably can in some other areas. Right. But why not that area?
Because we all grow up with certain values, and it's very
confirmation bias.
It's very hard to change intrinsic values.
Sure.
Confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You give them a vaccine, they're all go. First, you're going to die from whatever you get from some vaccine.
It's such a silly argument, right? It's like if we have a vaccine, you could make an analogy. Like if we have a vaccine for lung cancer. And if we give that to everyone, is everyone now going to start smoking? No, obviously not everyone's going to go start smoking, right? But and even if they do start smoking, well, it doesn't matter. They're not going to get lung cancer because we have a vaccine against it. Mm-hmm. So who cares if they're all sluts now? they're not going to get cancer and die anyway.
No, but it's just not okay. I love you.
Makes sense in my brain.
That's awesome. Oh, jeez. Yeah. I totally hear you. The fallacy of people's minds. It's scare tactics from the ignorant. There's also this other one, surge in cannabis amongst youth, preceded legalization in cannabis in Canada.
So I'm trying to find the article.
So this study says that what did it say, Dr. Vicky?
That the years leading up to policy change, that there was a spike in use or an increase in use. But again, I think like these studies are also drawing conclusions that that the data don't support either.
Right.
It just shows an increase in use, but like they don't know why there is that increase in use. They're not showing causation.
Yeah,
they're
correlation
just
is
showing,
not causation.
They're not even showing correlation.
Yeah.
That's
they're
that's
making
what
a
we're going
jump
to
on
talk
that
about.
one, yeah.
Right.
And
so there could be any number of reasons.
in this silly thing, it even says, what's that, Al?
I was just going to say it might also be the fact that they knew what was coming and they wanted to try it. I know I have a lot of friends that didn't smoke. Now they do. And that's about when they, as we were getting closer and closer to the 17th.
Oh, Al doesn't listen. Yes, Al. I love how you pay attention to
I am paying attention.
We're talking about the youth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I don't.
Fine.
I think they're just.
I also I'm trying to find the actual stats on it, but I know there has been a drop in teenage drinking, and I wonder if those curves.
I don't know about the teenage drinking. That might be an interesting thing. But even this study, this FEAR national discussion on cannabis legalization, along with increased access to medical cannabis, may have encouraged more high school students to consume drugs.
Where's the freaking hysteria on Adderall? Yo.
Yeah, because why? We need productive people.
Yeah.
Or opioids, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of hysteria now. So that brings me to... So let's actually look at the evidence. Screw all this stuff, all these little arguments that we can have as to, cannabis, all this stuff saying cannabis in the youth. Watch that we have to be careful that we don't encourage them to use it, so don't market it. And let's see what's really happening in there. So this week, January 10th, what's happening up there? We good?
July 10th.
July 10th. 2000 and what is it? 2019. By the way, if you need to do anything, it's that. Okay.
What's that?
That's the. Don't send that code out.
Oh, okay.
See, we got side gig going on here. So in 2000, so July 10th, just recently, out comes this study. We've reviewed it before. We're doing a systematic review again, guys. Systematic review with a meta-analysis on does liberalization of cannabis policy influence levels of use in adolescents and young adults? So this is, again, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Remember when we spoke about that? A systematic review just means that they look at as much evidence as they possibly can, as many studies as they can that look at these things. They look at them in a systematic way. So they use a specific protocol to abstract data from the actual studies. It's just looking at a whole bunch of studies in a very specific way so that they can try to make inferences from it. The inferences that they make is the meta-analysis part. That's where they take the qualitative data that they've got from doing their systematic review and they add statistics to it. When you add statistics to it, that's called the meta-analysis. So we're looking at this really cool study. This study was done somewhere. Bunch of people that don't look like they're in North America. Right? Do you know where it's from? Oh, here. Department of who did it? Oh, it says New York.
Columbia University.
Oh, is that where it was done?
Department of Epidemiology, or one of the authors.
Oh,
that's just one of the authors.
One's from Paris.
One's from Paris, yeah. One's from
New
York.
So I don't know where this was published from, to be honest.
Published by BMJ?
No, I know who published it, but where did they write it? Out of which university? Because that would be really cool. Because it doesn't look like it's North American.
It looks like the majority are from Paris.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna say this came out of France. Sounds like, even though none of those names sound French. They all look like they're Spanish.
Nakamura sounds
aside from
Japanese.
Yeah. De Silva sounds Portuguese. And Hausvater sounds maybe German. No.
No.
El Khoury
Austrian.
Sounds like Middle Eastern. Anyway, bottom line is it's from somewhere around, not in Canada. But it was a really well done it was to the knowledge of the authors and to my knowledge and maybe to Dr. Vicky's knowledge, it was the first of its kind to look at all three types of settings around liberalization. Policy changes around liberalization of cannabis. And I think one of the first things that I noticed when we go through we always go through the questions, but a couple things we first have to define. So they defined the difference because they looked at three different topics. Their study question was great. To examine, I think they did a good job. And that was to examine the effects of cannabis policy liberalization, and they included decriminalization and legalization. Levels of use in adolescents and young adults. So I think one of the most important things, actually, I learned what is the difference between decriminalization and legalization? Do you know, Al?
It depends on who you ask. No, I'm here.
Yeah,
it depends on who you ask. Literally.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there's a legal term for it. So how they defined it here. I love when Al just answers shit. Yeah, it just depends on who you ask. I think in a court of law.
Telling you if it's
If
telling
we
you.
were asking a lawyer.
If we were asking a lawyer, Al, what do you think he's going to say?
You're going to go to jail versus you're not going to go to jail. Basically.
No, what's the difference between decriminalization and legalization?
Legalization is legal, and decriminalization is just that. It's there. You don't get charged.
Right.
Yeah.
You're actually pretty much.
You saved it at the end
You
there.
actually are pretty much on. So this is what it says. Decriminalization is the reduction of penalties for cannabis use while maintaining penalties for cannabis supply.
Okay.
Legalization is the permission to use and supply oneself via however you want to. Legalization for medical purposes is, well, we already know that. Anyway, so I like how they defined that, because what these guys did is they looked at three different population segments. They looked at cannabis. Did cannabis use go up amongst the youth in places that have decriminalization only? Did cannabis use go up in places that had medical legalization? And did cannabis use go up in the youth in places that had legalization? So cannabis was legalized. Those are the three populations that they looked at, which were really interesting because I think those are all really important to look at. Because I just read you an article that said, from Canada, cannabis use amongst youth in Canada has gone up, which is some opinion because of medical legalization. So let's look at the evidence. So, and we're just going to start going through this thing. Did the review, we're looking at this one again, like I said, did the review explicitly address a sensible clinical question? I think it did.
I would agree.
Right? They looked at those three. It's really three. Did they try to bite off more than they could handle?
They just looked at, they had to look at different scenarios because the laws in different states or different provinces are different, right? Like in
different countries.
Yeah, in different countries.
And the access to it's going to be different. And
Yeah,
I can't hear you.
Sorry, the access is going to be different as well.
Are you guys really don't smell something burning?
No, man.
Sure don't.
I'll put it out.
Could be this. Was the search, again, we're going through the same types of analysis stuff. Was the search for relevant studies detailed and exhaustive?
Yeah, we talked about that, and it does seem maybe a bit limited because they did limit to only English studies published in English, and there's a lot of countries around the world who have policy changes with cannabis, with regards to cannabis.
Right.
Portugal and Spain come to mind.
Portugal comes because her husband's Portuguese, and everything is Portugal.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe there were studies there that they missed. And those countries have certainly had those policies and changed for a really long time.
Yeah.
So their studies could have been more longitudinal or longer term than the studies that were possible within the U.S. which formed the bulk of their analysis, right? So I think they probably missed out a bit there.
They did say they identified 3,438 studies research papers. But
I mean, that number is unworkable, right? Like, you
Yeah.
can't do anything with that. So I appreciate they need to whittle it down in some way, but
yeah,
you know,
they
could
said
have missed a lot there.
3,293 were in English. And then they looked at a whole bunch of other things. So I agree with you. I totally agree. I think maybe it was like exhaustive. They looked at all the right databases. They did PubMed, PsycInfo, Embase, like all the stuff that most people would look at when you're doing a meta-analysis or a systematic review. I just don't know why they only include English. You can't just do that. I think that
you can't do it anymore.
Well, logistics, of course. Like, how do you go? Like, you have to have
translated,
people,
and then
but there are most of these articles are translated. Although there are some, like I know when I was looking at the evidence for cannabis like years ago, I couldn't find some of the evidence was in a different language, and I had no idea what it said. I brought it into. I remember bringing in a non-English article into one of my reviews. What are you doing for cannabis? I'm like, here's what I'm doing. So what does it say? Well, get a translator. I'll tell you.
There you go.
Anyway, okay. So we're gonna say maybe a little, maybe not. Were the primary studies of high methodological quality. So just on a quick review of the 3,438 articles. Remember the first time we went through one of these, you have to go through a specific criteria looking for bias.
Yeah.
Right. And when you look for bias, you're looking for how the raters look at it. You're looking for, are they similar in some ways? Was bias entered into this study? And so after going through all 3,000, they actually reviewed 41. There was some that were duplicates as well. They ended up looking at or screening 2,312 studies. Of that, all they ended up with was what?
41 studies.
Yeah, they ended up with 41 studies. Of all of those studies, though, there was only a very select few. Like,
why did they down to 41?
Because so for all the reasons I could tell you. So there was 58 full text articles excluded, 12 outcomes weren't eligible, 11 not. All various reasons.
Okay.
It's usually their inclusion or exclusion criteria. So the articles had to, so age would have been like one exclusion criteria. It has to be the population they're dealing with has to be less than 25. They had to have quantitative data. They couldn't just deal with like changes in perception of use. It had to be actual changes in use.
Like, okay.
So, things like that would have excluded a lot of papers. And then they nixed review papers, policy papers, opinion pieces, expert things.
So anything
letters,
that we didn't have
like
enough
that.
like cold facts behind it kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
Anything that wasn't a cold fact. It was like if all the shit that we're reading right now that says, oh yeah, cannabis use has gone up. If it came from the media, I'm sure it was excluded.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even they included some surveys, which is what I actually like. Back to the did they exhaust all their stuff? One of their strengths of their article is that they didn't just take it from the scientific literature. They went to epidemiological literature. They went to sociological literature. They went to government literature. So they took it from a broad spectrum of fields. Not just
this you kind of have to.
Which is great. Yeah. I mean, you have to because it. When you're talking
it's
about
hard to measure it correctly without.
And when you're talking about how it affects youth, it's not just the scientific. No one's going to a doctor. You know what I mean? It's like it's got to come from even economics. They went to the economic literature and looked at it. So after all was said and done, they included 41 studies, and they only analyzed the studies that were of very low to low bias. Which is good. That's what you want. Okay? So the next question under are the results valid? Because we got to make sure that we can at least, qualify this. It's like when you go into court and you have to qualify the expert witness. We got to qualify that we can even look at this study as something that's real. Do you know what I mean? So and that's what we're doing now. So were the assessments of the studies reproducible? Meaning, was it only one person looking at these studies? And if one person's looking at it, they're going to add bias. Would somebody else look at it and see the same thing? What do we look at? You know what I mean?
Well, I feel like there's quite a few people that were working on this, so that like chances of that are.
But when we talk about abstracting the data, let's say they had 41 studies at the end of the day, right? So you're not going to have one person look at all 41 studies. You're going to you'll have some people look at these studies, some people look at these studies, some people look at those studies. Kind of yeah, you're going to group it off.
I think validity is a little bit hard to do for a review article or a meta-analysis. Because, I mean, like, we're looking at
rater reliability.
Yeah, and that sort of thing, right? I almost think of validity as more like, can I reproduce, like, these results from a drug study or something? You know what I mean? I think of validity more in that sort of scenario. But,
I think you're looking at a different type. We're talking about a kappa value now. So we're looking at a different, not validity of the results, just validity of if two people read the same thing, would they see the same thing? That's what they're talking about here. So I sit on like, I'm on a research grant that's doing a meta-analysis. And I'll tell you, so I have a partner and we each look at 8 studies and we grade the studies based on, what are the results. And then we sit together and we say, what did you see? What did you see? And we look at them. And if we don't see similar things, we can't include that. Because the inter-rater reliability is too high. What you see and what I see are too different. So in this case, they had 2 people that looked at a bunch of different studies, and then if there was problems, they would have other people look at them. But they didn't list a kappa value, so I don't know how the inter-rater reliability was.
Right.
But what I can say is that the ones they included, it seems to say that they did a pretty good job of
deciding that they were
good enough to be included. All right. So, what are the results of the study? Were they similar? You know how we talk about, or were the results similar from study to study? So, between these 41 studies, you know how we've spoken before, this study is looking at those 3 topics. Remember, they analyzed each 3 questions. Remember the first one we looked at when we looked at cannabis for Crohn's disease or cannabis for pain, cannabis for Meniere's, cannabis, and they looked at such a broad spectrum. These guys looked at 3 areas. They looked at cannabis use, like I mentioned, cannabis use amongst adolescents who during criminalization, legalization, and medical legalization. So the question then becomes, were they similar? Were all the studies, when they analyzed these studies, remember we talked about heterogeneity or homogeneity? Are the studies, if you have 4 people sitting in a room, they're likely all going to have a different answer. Where if I have 10,000 people in a room, the answer is probably going to be a little more narrow. So if studies are close to each other, done in the same way, were all the variables similar to each other, you're probably going to be able to make an inference. But if you study 2 different populations, you're not going to get the right outcome, right? If I study men and women, when it comes to X, whatever it is, it's different than if I study women and men and men. Right. So we call that homogeneous or heterogeneous. And Vicky doesn't. What do you think?
Well, there was a lot of heterogeneity in the studies.
It was impossible, yeah.
Yeah, and the biggest, I think, inconsistency was the age groups looked at. So 21 studies.
She gets detailed.
Yeah, so 21 studies looked at the age group of 12 to 17 years old. 6 studies were 18 to 25, and then another 14 studies did both age groups.
Can I just mention something?
So that's a big limitation.
She read this article in like 20 fucking minutes. I spent 3 hours. And I'm like, I don't understand. I gave this article when she showed up. She's there on her computer. I can't write on computer. I got to highlight. Like, I'm like old school highlight.
You make lists?
I make lists.
You make lists?
I think this is why I'm a millennial.
Oh, shut up.
But I do make lists.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
What do you mean make lists?
An ability to focus and task manage is so much better in people that make lists. The ability to do that and the inability to stay on point.
I can always stay on point.
I'm very much the same. Just like all over the place.
I can always stay on point, yo.
There you go.
Another limitation to their homogeneity. some studies were cross-sectional, some were longitudinal. So like even the type of study was,
can you
like,
describe what that means? What does it mean to have a longitudinal study versus a cross-sectional study?
Right. So the longitudinal study, you start with a
Can
population.
you talk loud so those people can
The
hear?
longitudinal study, you start with a population and you follow them forward, and then the cross-sectional, I can't remember what it is.
You just look at a
You
point
look-
in
I
time.
think is it point in
Yeah,
time?
it's you take a section of
Yeah.
the population and you look at them.
Okay.
So like the difference is, I mean.
So the differences are that there was a lot of heterogeneity,
Right.
meaning it was very difficult for them to actually analyze them. The truth is, at the end of the day, they couldn't do a meta-analysis on any of the studies. They did a systematic review and looked at them, but they were because if you have so much heterogeneity, you're unable to you can't do stats because they just make no. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah.
You just can't do a
They're just
study on
different,
apples
yeah.
if you're looking at oranges or whatever. So they weren't able to do that at all. So there was a lot of heterogeneity that made it very difficult. But what were the results that they did find? So you will find it really interesting from all the studies, and they did bring it all together, even though they were unable to do a meta-analysis. Looking at the studies and summarizing the data, you would be happy to note, and Health Canada should look at this because it's the first of its kind that
Probably not, though.
that there was. What's that?
Said probably not, though.
All the Health Canada won't look at it?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not. But you'd be happy to note that there's really no change in cannabis use in adolescents after legalization.
I think Health Canada will maybe take the study, but then they do their own study, right? So they don't like make policy based on other people's studies. They do their own
Right.
studies.
That makes.
I don't even know if they make policy on their own studies. I think that they, yeah.
What are you trying to say there? She just has to be argumentative.
No, I'm just saying
Arguing.
Health Canada, like they want their own data, right? To make their
Policy decision.
statement. Yeah, they're not
But they
going to
don't-
take someone else's research
No, of
and
course, yeah.
make
Okay,
decisions.
but they
based on
did
that.
set up a task force for legalization of
course.
cannabis and listen to none of it.
Something about saving face or something.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyhow,
something.
sorry.
a
Sidebar.
lot of crap.
Yeah, of course.
But yes, of course. But this is what I'm saying
Yeah,
is
this is really
this
positive
is
results.
if you want the truth, you can't listen to the media and what you're seeing out there. You got to
Or
go
the
to the
government.
evidence, or maybe the government. In some cases, maybe you can, but you got to go to the evidence, and the evidence is telling you from this. Now, clearly, it's not strong evidence because they couldn't do the meta-analysis. So they accept in one situation. I'm not there yet.
Sure. No, I was also going to say it is also limited in terms of the duration of like the follow-up period, right? So they only looked at 1 year.
Love how
follow-up.
you're using my point. No, you could steal my thunder, woman. Go.
No, that was just my point. It's also so like there are limitations to the study, which I guess we'll get to. I'm sorry, we're not.
No, but you have a good point. In limitations, aside from like just let me just finish the results of the
Of
study.
course.
So when it came to decriminalization, no change in the study. When it came to
I will say they did comment that there was one study in 12 to 17-year-olds that showed there was an increased use by 12%.
oh really?
Yeah,
Where's that?
There was one study in the decriminalization
Look at you,
category.
so detail oriented. Decriminalization, but they couldn't do a meta-analysis. Oh yeah, meta-analysis. All 13 we observed. Yeah, they couldn't do that.
They said that there was one
Found
study in Australia that was conducted exclusively among adolescents aged 12 to 17 years that
here we go.
a 12% increase in cannabis use following decriminalization. But just one study.
Right. The other
of
ones
13 studies.
Right. And they had an N of 39,000. Is that the N of 39,000?
Yes.
So that's a pretty big study, though.
Yes.
But an N of 15,468, an N of 1,524, and also 12,686 found no evidence for statistical significant changes.
There are 12 other studies that showed no change following decriminalization. It was just this one study, and this one study did happen to be the largest.
It was the
population
largest study, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it considered low bias, hopefully?
It did not comment on it.
It didn't, did it?
No.
Interesting. Anyway, what they couldn't do is any statistics. So we have no idea how precise that estimation is
Right.
on any of the studies. So we couldn't put all the evidence together. But what we can say is on general, there was no change in after decriminalization aside from that one study.
They did also comment that study was an outlier based on the other studies. So they even tried to do their heterogeneity statistics without that study in the calculations. But the other studies were still
how do you feel about that, Dr. Vicky? How do you feel about excluding studies? I'll tell you. I'll tell you my argument, and then you can tell me your argument. I think it's okay. I think you can take a study. In this case, they try because when you have the mean, like you have this thing that looks like this,
the normal distribution,
right? Whatever it's called, normal distribution, the thing that looks like this, and then somehow 95%
of the population
fits into this thing, and then you have like these outliers, like all of us that are
2.5% on either side.
That 2.5% on each side.
Is that what it is? 2.5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. Like us outliers that sit out here.
That's why it's a 95% confidence interval.
Right. Okay.
And sometimes those people can really see the gravitational force of those 2.5% on either side can outweigh the entire distribution of a study of the mean. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you try to exclude them. You see what happens to the results if you exclude them. Mm. I think it's okay to do that for population statistics. I don't think on an individual basis that would make sense because those results are still important for an individual. But that being said, on a population mass scale, even though it's important and we're trying to come up with an answer, you should try different statistical methods, including them, excluding them, and see what happens to see how much variance you have.
Yeah, because I think like if you don't, you're never going to actually like get anything like really.
That's right. Like, now she doesn't believe that.
So in my opinion, it does.
Can we turn the mics off for this part?
So to me, it sort of seems like you're massaging the data to get the results that you want because you're excluding the data that doesn't make sense.
Oh,
and so my thought is that maybe that is a signal that something else is going on and that you should do further studies.
Is that, you think that's still on?
As opposed to just eliminating the data altogether.
Do you ever notice that his pants fall down every time he stands up?
I know, it's because I can find the belt.
He never has the belt for that. He says the same thing every time.
I'm pretty sure that's how you wear your pants too, isn't it?
What's that?
Isn't that how you wear your pants?
Yeah, did it go off?
Yeah, it just stopped.
I should share that, and I have to go back live again, right?
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Do I need to say my little spiel again?
Yeah. What was your little spiel again? I don't know when it went off, so I have no idea. Can you? We're putting it back live again. There we go. Al, are you still around?
Of course I am.
Oh, he's sleeping. He's like, "What the fuck are these guys?"
Oh, dude, I'm sitting here listening.
Talking about. Okay, so anyway, Vicky believes that you shouldn't exclude studies. I believe you should exclude studies, and you should at least try, because on a population basis, we should try to find a result. And if you have an outlier, the gravitational force of an outlying study can sway the results of the whole thing. Vicky says those are important to have, and those results are important to have. And
so I think it's good that you do the analysis with the outlier in and with the outlier removed. I think that's fine as long as you report that. But it seems a little bit self-serving to remove these studies.
Whatever. We're now talking bullshit. I'm getting bored. I'm falling asleep.
Fine.
Okay, let's move on from that. So, what are the overall results? So
that was decriminalization.
Decriminalization, no change.
Except for one study. That we decided to ignore. Well, we're not ignoring it. You need to take it into account. What they tried to do was a meta-analysis, and they couldn't, so they tried to take it out, but it still didn't make any difference. Okay, we're moving on. Still no change. Jesus. Just can't, unbelievable, this woman. All right. Details. Then on medical cannabis use. Right, legalization of cannabis for medical use.
Right. No change.
No change.
Not only no change, I'll bring up one study that showed there was a decrease.
There's actually 3 studies.
Oh, Jesus. You
think you're winning. And
just remember that I won addiction.
I was so ready for that.
Was it
that's
3
one of those,
studies?
She was stocking up on ammunition. When
You know
that,
what the best part is?
Change in her eyes
She
when
was,
you notice it.
she was like, I'm waiting for you to screw this
like,
up.
Oh, he's gonna walk.
You know,
right
the
into
best
this
part
one.
is it's right in front of me. In 3 studies conducted amongst adolescents, legalization of medical cannabis was followed by a decrease in use.
The best place to hide something with you is probably in plain sight, right?
Honestly, Jesus. All right.
So good.
Then we have
again, they couldn't conduct it.
a meta-analysis.
Yeah.
So again, they couldn't do the statistics on it. Now, cannabis for legalization of recreational purposes, its use on adolescents. So this is the only one that they were, if they included every study that they had, they couldn't do a meta-analysis. They were then able to remove 1 or 2 of these studies. She's going to tell me 10. Listen, who fucking cares? At the end of the day, I'm giving you a summary. I'm not giving you the, go read the damn study yourself.
Yeah, they did. They excluded one outlier.
They excluded an outlier, and they were then able to do a meta-analysis. So they did this meta-analysis that showed that there was a 0.03% increase in adolescent use of cannabis post-legalization. Now, they did the stats on it, and the stats said not true. So at the end of the day, they just weren't significant. So you can't make any generalization. The stats crossed 0. The confidence interval crossed 0, which means that you can't make like saying you can't give me an answer. Mm-hmm. The precision is so far off. There's no way we can give you an answer. So there was, though, what was the word you like to use?
I said that there's a signal towards increased use, but it's not statistically significant.
Which means there's no significance to it. That being said, you still have to take into consideration that this potentially can happen, and it's something we have to monitor on an ongoing basis.
Would that signal be enough to warrant further study?
Maybe, but if you put it also in perspective, 0.03% is also a very small number, right? So
it's 3 people out of 1,000.
Yeah. You know? So who cares, right? We talk about clinically significant.
I send people home with heart attacks, probably around 98%. So 2%. So a 2% increase. We can still send people home with heart attacks. In the hospital. My goal always when I talk about likelihood ratios, or when I talk about do you have a disease or not have a disease, I'm usually okay with 95% of the chance. Mm-hmm. That's what we're always usually happy with. 95% to 98% chance you don't. Yeah. We're talking about 0.03%. Yeah. So it's pretty very, very small. But this brings up a point that Vicky just talked about. So are these results precise? First of all, no. The only one that could do it was the meta-analysis part was the one of legalization for recreational purposes, and there was no statistical significance. But again, you brought up a really good point in that, and that's the point that all these studies they included studies only that looked at people over a 1-year period of time. Yeah. It was either 1 year post-legalization or followed people for 1 year period of time. So the question is that enough to see change? No. I think
likely not.
Well, you said it's going to take decades.
I think so.
Yeah. I think the stigma is going to take at least 5 years to decrease.
A generation, I would think.
Yeah, so I think you need more longitudinal studies to make the decision, and I think we're probably going to see a larger increase in 5 years than we are in 1 year of time. Nothing gets done in a year. Al, what do you think? I just want to hear. What's up, Al?
I'm here.
So I just asked you a question.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't paying attention, Ira.
I love it.
Pointing at.
I love it. This is why I want your face up here so that we can see what's going on. I said, the question is, at the end of the day, when it comes to legalization, do you think that that looking at people after 1 year of legalization is enough to see if there's a significant increase in adolescent use? No, because it's going to take way longer to see the effect.
Of course. And we talked a little bit about this beforehand as well, depending on the geography of where the policy changes happened, the increase in use may or may not be more dramatic. So in this study, they give the example of Colorado. So rates of use in Colorado pre-legalization were quite high anyways. Mm-hmm. So post-legalization, those rates are very unlikely to go up.
And it's a special
anyways,
type of people
right?
that live in Colorado, let's be honest.
Yeah, well, right? So,
I'm just saying.
The rates were already high, so you're probably not going to see much of a change. Whereas if you legalize in a country that had no high use,
had it severe jail time,
right?
Like Skinner,
you're going to see, you're going to see significant changes. So there were some significant limitations to the study, but I think in general, can you apply this? Can you take these results and start applying them to the general public? I mean, yes and no. You have to, again, take it with a grain of sand or salt or whatever you usually take stuff with.
But they also can't explain why the use or there's that signal for increased use, right? Like maybe the actual use is not increased. Maybe they're just now reporting that they're using because they're no longer going to be penalized for use, right? So it's not necessarer's
so many different factors.
Right? So I don't know. It's hard I think it's a positive study overall, showing that legalization does not really affect use. But maybe
amongst adolescents,
right? But maybe they should dig into the details a little bit further.
Is the problem not that this issue is so multifaceted that it's almost ill-equipped to do proper studies on it?
The problem it's qualitative data, and it's very hard to do good qualitative studies, right? Because it's all based on surveys and self-reporting and that sort of thing. Right?
That's why we do the meta-analysis part. If they were able to do the meta-analysis part, then we would get some good data out of it. The only part that we know for sure that they did a meta-analysis on was legalization for recreational purposes, which showed no statistical significance, even though there was a trend towards 3 out of 1,000 people.
They're lacking power. They just don't have enough studies on that.
Well, I would think 41 studies that have low bias, most of which show that there's no change. It's just they're heterogeneous. I think what's up? You tell me what you get your brain going.
Because that percentage is so low that factoring in I know you can't put it in a study, but just logically thinking, people are like a higher percentage than that not saying it to begin with because they're getting penalized. So I would think that it decreased then, right?
Sorry, to clarify, there are only 8 studies that they used for legalization for recreational purposes.
Right.
So that's...
Oh, there was different studies in each, right, because the ones that
41 studies were total. But
right, and then they split 13, 20, and 8 or something like that.
So, so legalization for rec purposes
only had 8 studies.
Had 8 studies that they looked at.
So but at least they're looking at evidence.
Is that enough, though?
What we're saying... It's not enough, but I mean, they're saying that there isn't much of an increase and through any of these things. But these studies that they did include had pretty good methodology and were very low in bias, which means they had good methodology and they had all this other good stuff. The problem is they were unable to compare. They're unable to compare the studies together to give us quantitative answers. And it's not because the studies sucked. It's just that the populations they studied them in were so different, right? Some were age 2 to 17. Some were 17 to 25. Some had hair, some didn't have hair. Who knows what it was? But that's what adds all the heterogeneity that makes them unable to compare to each other. Doesn't mean that each study individual doesn't hold weight.
But also the type of study as well, because
of course,
different types of study, you get different data and you have different biases in different types of
study. So they could, so not just characteristics, but in all characteristics, study type, study people, methodology, all that kind of stuff added to the heterogeneity. But that doesn't mean that the studies on their own aren't valid. It just means they're not able to compare them because it's like comparing apples to oranges. And you can't compare those two together and say this is what the apples and this is the mango that you get, because you just can't do that, unfortunately. But if we're looking at objective evidence, you have 41 objective studies here, and 99% of them, aside from a few of them, right? Like there's one study that showed an increase of 12% and another one that showed an increase of 0.03% or whatever.
There's actually 3 studies in the legalization of cannabis for rec uses that showed increases.
That's right,
but they were very small.
There was no, but when they did their statistics, it came out to 0.03%.
Right, but among individual studies.
Individual studies, fair. Individual studies, 3 studies out of the 41 studies that they looked at, plus 1 in another category.
Did they have hypothesis?
At the end of the day, it's such a small amount, which is my point. Instead of getting stuck on all these fucking details, Vicky, Jesus.
I'm using evidence to back up our statements.
Okay, that's fair. But I mean, I'm just giving generalizations. But I was right in the beginning. Let's just remember. Let's go back to the beginning when I was right about addiction. All right? That's all that matters. That's the only thing that matters from this whole podcast.
I think what I said about addiction was that it's not a diagnosis.
Oh, now she waited this entire time. She was thinking of how I could say it. No, you said it was not a scientific term, is what you said.
I said it was not a medical diagnosis.
Term. But you said it was not a medical term.
Okay, maybe
you said it was a sociology. Thank you. We're not getting out of that one. All right, you get enough right in here. That's right. So at the end of the day, if we look individually, I think what this shows us though is that we have to look at the evidence, and we can't just rely on media. And we can't rely on government. We can't rely on a lot of the stuff that we hear and that we see. And we can't rely on fear-based tactics that are based in stigma to decide how we can market cannabis, how safe do we have to make our children, what things are going to affect our children. We have to look at hard facts.
I would just say that, like, to add to that, you just need to critically appraise everything. Like, it's not necessarily that you can't rely on like sources of information, but you should always view it through a critical lens, right? Yeah. There's always motivation behind articles that are written, right? And so you just need to think about things critically and appraise things critically.
So, I mean, that's all well and good, but like humans don't operate that way. So how do we operate that way? The emotional argument is always going to win, right? Like it's like, you know.
But that's why we have science, man.
Science I know. Like science is my religion, like for
science
sure. But
has brought us further in 100 years than religion has.
How do we put more importance on
10,000? Or no, how long's the world been around for? 6,400.
The Earth is 14.6 billion years old.
No, religion says it's been around for 5,780.
And they're never wrong about anything.
No, what's that?
I think the Earth is 4.6.
4.6?
The universe is 14 billion.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And we're living in black holes.
Yeah.
But how?
No, we're not living in black holes.
Well, why not? We could. No, theoretically we could.
You're living in a black hole, Ira.
No, really, theoretically we could.
I'm in a gray one.
We don't know what's inside. What we know is the whole universe exists inside the black holes, perhaps.
No,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Moving on.
Massive black hole at the center
Beep. Could
be.
Beep. Oh, jeez. Are we talking about black holes? There's a really good documentary on Netflix.
It was really fun.
Called
Black Hole Apocalypse.
Black Hole Apocalypse.
Okay. I haven't seen that one. Wait, this is new?
It's
a new one. Yeah, I saw an ad for it.
Yeah. Cool. All right, everybody. I think we beat this guy down.
Yep.
And but we don't beat people. Because
unless we're playing hockey,
don't get him started, dude.
Hey, unless we're playing hockey. So can we generalize this? What do we do for our patients because of this study? How do we move forward? Are these results applicable to our population? I think they are, and I think the most important thing that we have to take into consideration is like what Dr. Vicky said. We have to critically appraise everything that's in front of us when it comes to cannabis, because everybody's trying to sell us a damn story about something. There's pros, there's cons.
It's not the be-all, end-all, and it's not poison.
Look, as I said at the beginning, Ira, everybody has their own opinion.
At the end, Al is right. But we got to look at the evidence.
Yeah. I mean, the evidence is there. I don't, I have been listening, and I can't make heads or tails of all that data. We need some real time data that explains all this shit, because
that is he's paid. Yeah, that is real time data. What that did is take all the real time data.
I'm talking about human data, like what's really going on. Never mind all that malarkey.
Did they study robots?
You were paying so much attention, Al. I love it.
I lose interest. It's not a loss of interest. It's just there's too much big words and ADHD over here. So
Yeah,
from a layman's point of view, Ira, that made no sense other than there's no increase.
But that's all we're saying.
Okay.
That's basically the bottom line. Is what we're saying is looking at all the human evidence that's out there, like you said. There's really no change, but we need more data because we
need more context.
Yeah. We're able to compare groups together.
To generalize to our patients or our patient population, I would say that this paper supports that legalization is a positive thing, and with cannabis being legalized, it opens the door for more research, which helps our patients.
On a medical level or on a recreational level?
Yeah, that's true. But even if you look at the hypothesis for why it's happening or the benefits of it, they're all positive.
Right.
Right. When you look at it, like the harm reduction, the more education on it, the like higher quality product, or like all of those kinds of things,
point.
The lower cost.
There's so many variables, right? The amount that you carry, the amount of dispensaries. Legalization, is not just a simple thing, and there's so many variables that account for changes in consumption, which makes it so hard to. Every society, I guess, is going to have to make their own decision as to how
you bring in mental health
they're going to do it.
Thing, and it's like Jesus, like you're.
Didn't you say some mental health thing came out? Was that you?
It was a psychiatrist who was interviewed by a Medscape article or reporter. Or
what did they say?
She was just discussing. She touched on psychosis. She touched on like the gateway aspect or concern. However, she used it in a
gateway concern?
So she used it not as like a gateway to hard drugs like cocaine or heroin or something like that. She used it as they're seeing that youth turn to cannabis as their first substance as opposed to tobacco now. So and so that cannabis could be a gateway to tobacco.
Oh. Huh.
So I'll give you the.
But I mean, so like just.
I haven't heard that one before, but
interesting stuff, right?
I'll give you, if you want to talk about like the myth of cannabis as a gateway drug to hardline drugs.
Oh, that's right.
I'll give you
alcohol is.
I'll give you the gateway. I'll give you the gateway theory, and then I'll show you how it's wrong, and that's how research is conducted. So when it comes to cannabis as a gateway drug, you can read Diane Riley's dissertation in 1996 that she wrote for the Honorable Pierre Nolan for the Parliament of Canada, when they describe how it's actually done and why it's a myth. So if I look at and it has to do with selection bias, which means how we look at the evidence. If I want to know how many people in society are using cannabis, who do I look at? But I want to know if cannabis is a gateway drug. Those who use cannabis are also using crack. Well, if you look at people that are only using, every society has about a 4% hardline drug use, except places that have legalization of all drugs, and they go down about 2%. So let's say most societies have a 4% rate of cannabis use, of hardline drug use. So if I was looking at does cannabis lead to hardline drug use? And I looked at it from the perspective of, well, I'm going to look at all the hardline drug users and see if they use cannabis. What percentage do you think of hardline drug users use cannabis?
Very high.
Super fucking high. Like 90% of them. And
probably
so
all smoke
and they all smoke tobacco, they all do all this shit.
Just
right.
Throw it in
so
there.
So my conclusion would be cannabis is a gateway drug because hardline drug users use cannabis. But now let's go to cannabis users, which make up now 18% of the population, which in some populations are 40%. And let's look at them and say, how many of you use hardline drugs? What are you looking at? Think it's a high percentage? It's a tiny percentage because it's most of the population. 40% of your it's less than 4%. So if I looked at statistically, if I looked at the population of cannabis users that used hardline drugs, I would say there's a small percentage of cannabis users that go on to use hardline drugs. We call that selection bias. The studies that looked at cannabis use or at hardline drug use after cannabis use look at the hardline drug users. They're not looking at the whole population. So if you look at the whole population, you're looking at a tiny percentage of people that go on to use hardline drugs. So it's really a small percentage. So that basically throws away the myth of cannabis as a gateway drug.
Same kind of way that sugar was sold to us, right?
It is, pretty much. All right, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you, Dr. Vicky, for coming on.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Lucas, for being there. Al, as usual, it's always a blast. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Shabam.
All right. See you next week.
Peace out.
Oh, hold on. No.
Wait.
Not peace.
No.
Not peace.
Not peace.
I'm here. We have to plug a couple things. Yoga.
Yoga.
Hold on. I don't even know what days. Mondays.
Because Tyler's not
6:30.
there.
There's another day that's yoga as well. Might be Wednesdays. Mondays, Wednesdays, yoga. Check out Synergy Health Services for yoga in Burlington. That would be awesome. Are you still there?
Yeah, but
What's up? Yeah. What am I doing?
You're doing shout-outs.
No, I'm not looking stuff up. I want that to be live, yo.
okay.
I don't need to look nothing up.
Okay.
Okay, so it's Monday, and don't worry about the other day. Just figure it out. Check out. I don't know if it's even on the website. It's actually. Oh, you're right. That's why you brought me my phone, because I was looking for. I didn't know why you brought me my phone. It was in an email.
You want your phone back now, or is it too late?
Yeah, no, we're still on live.
Okay,
Just
okay.
keep it up there.
All right.
What else can we do? What else do I have to plug?
SoundCloud.
Check out what? Check
iTunes,
SoundCloud.
YouTube. 'Cause I'm gonna take the snippets from just the journal parts and put those up and see.
Okay, that'll be cool. And what else do we have to check out? Check out Instagram, Dr. Ira Price. Check that out. And
Yoga is Mondays at 6 p.m. and Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
there you go. See, I had Monday and Wednesday. I had the time raw. Monday and Wednesday, 6 p.m. Is that on the website?
It sure is.
Go check out www.synergyhealthservices.ca
Boom.
and sign up for yoga in Burlington. Dr. Vicky is off to. Where are you going tomorrow? We didn't even get a whole story out of you. It's crazy. Where are you going tomorrow?
I'm going to Inuvik, Northwest Territories.
Ooh, badass.
Which is 250 kilometers above the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do there?
I will do pretty much everything there,
She's practicing medicine there for 2 weeks.
but old school medicine, like old school doctor. So I'll be doing anesthesia, emerge, hospice,
Wow.
family medicine.
Mike cousin
Everything.
did a
That's
place
pretty
like that.
freaking cool, man. So have an amazing time. Let us know how it goes. And is Mike going with you?
Yep, Mike and Jacob are going.
Whoa,
they're
you're
going
taking-
for a week.
You're taking is like I guess it's not that cold right now.
Right now, it's
pretty
probably
warm.
hotter than here
Yeah.
because they have 24 hours of daylight right now.
Oh shit,
Extremes.
that's
I've
crazy.
been to Dawson City during the summer. It's trippy. It's really trippy.
Dawson's Creek. Where was that?
Dawson's
it's
Creek is
probably
close
not there.
to Dawson's. No, there's a.
Is that a
Dawson's
Canadian
Creek
show?
There's a
What
Dawson's
are you
not a
using
Canadian
about? I'll just take this.
Yeah,
Gold
there's a
Rush
Dawson's
is
show.
shot up there.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So-
do. I have been up there during the summer. You do become a little bit manic.
Oh, wrong
Yeah.
way.
because you're like you
We
don't feel like
were-
sleeping.
We were there for like 3 or 4 days.
Don't put that on me.
It's on you.
Yeah.
And they have a
All right.
crazy concert that happens at the same time. But
Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. How do I turn this around? Oh,
So
let
what
me
are
just
you
say
doing?
goodbye.
Nothing?
Peace.
Why not?
Trying to get on this lifestyle radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.